There's a deep silence inside you that has been mistaken for peace, but it's not peace, it's suppression. It's the muffled roar of a system built to lead, now sedated by comfort, distraction, and fear. The truth is, your brain wasn't wired for passivity. The brain contains ancient neural circuits specifically designed for dominance, leadership, and forward action. These are not modern inventions. They are primal, embedded deep within the architecture of the human nervous system, passed down through generations of survival, battle, and responsibility. In the most ancient parts of the brain, the hypothalamus, the brainstem, the midbrain, there are pathways that light up when you take command, when you move forward with intention, when you hold your posture in the face of pressure. This is not metaphor, it is the language of biology. The Creator did not place passivity in your design. He etched into your neural code the instinct to rise, to guard, to build, to advance. You were built to be more than just a responder to life. You were built to initiate, to lead, to dominate with precision and righteousness. From the moment you face threat, your body is not just reacting, it is preparing for forward motion. Dominance is not about destruction, it is about alignment, it is about stepping into your God-given capacity to govern yourself and shape your environment. When you walk into a room and hold your spine straight, when your gaze is steady and your breath is anchored, specific neural circuits activate in the midbrain and prefrontal cortex. These regions coordinate power with purpose. They are designed to make you act not aimlessly, not with rage, but with certainty, with clarity. This is not arrogance, it is divine order. The lion does not apologize for his presence. He does not bark to prove his worth. He moves forward because forward is written into his design, so it is with you. The problem is that modern comfort has dulled the signal. Society tells men to mute the very circuits that make them strong, to suppress assertiveness, to medicate restlessness, to pacify purpose. And when you suppress those circuits long enough, they don't just go quiet, they begin to atrophy. The brain prunes what you don't use, but the opposite is also true. What you awaken, what you train, what you engage consistently, that grows. That strengthens, that becomes instinct. And when you reclaim those neural pathways through discipline, through challenge, through physical demand, through breath, through prayer, you begin to see what was always there. You don't create power, you uncover it. There are no shortcuts to this. You must earn the activation of those circuits. Not through shouting or pretending, but through stillness under fire, through courage in discomfort, through the daily decision to stand tall, speak less, and move with mission. When you choose to engage the world with your eyes wide open and your breath under control, the brain recognizes that as leadership, and it rewards you with dopamine, with clarity, with strength. These are not random surges, they are sacred affirmations from the nervous system that you are walking in design. You are aligning with purpose. You are stepping back into the code that was placed in you from the beginning, when man was made not just to exist, but to govern, to cultivate, to lead without fear and without apology. Healthy aggression and assertiveness are biologically necessary for confidence, motivation, and survival. These are not flaws to be tamed, they are functions to be trained. At the core of the human experience is a sacred fire, an inner drive fueled by circuits in the hypothalamus and midbrain, responsible for action, pursuit, and protection. Aggression, in its true form, is not destruction, it is direction. It is the internal command to move forward, to break inertia, to overcome resistance. When channeled with intention, it becomes the engine behind discipline, the force behind boundaries, the flame that pushes a man into the unknown with faith in his design. This drive is not toxic, it is holy, it is the spark that fueled prophets, warriors, builders, and fathers throughout history. Aggression becomes dangerous only when it is disconnected from order. But when it is anchored in structure and purpose, it becomes sacred fuel. It is the boldness to speak when silence would betray truth. It is the pressure to train when comfort seduces. It is the forward energy that drives prayer into action, vision into movement, strength into service. The man who fears his own aggression will fear his own power. He will hesitate, avoid, shrink, and conform, not because he lacks capability, but because he has been taught to see his inner fire as a threat instead of a gift. And every time he buries that fire, he buries part of his identity. Your biology was not designed for passivity. The very structures of your brain, the peri-aqueductal gray, the anterior cingulate cortex, are activated when you pursue a goal with intention, when you step into competition, when you assert presence with integrity. This is where confidence is born, not from empty affirmation, but from embodied motion. The nervous system tracks your behavior. When you act with courage, even in fear, even in tremble, it registers that pattern. It begins to map that pattern as truth. This is how confidence is built, not from comfort, but from repeatedly leaning into challenge and showing your brain that you are capable of carrying the weight. Aggression is not about noise, it's about nerve. Assertiveness is not about control, it's about clarity. You were not called to chase approval or avoid conflict. You were wired to stand firm, speak clearly, and walk forward when others freeze. This is not just personality, this is physiology. A man in alignment with his biology is a man who uses his aggression in prayer, in training, in leadership, in love, not to dominate others, but to refuse domination from weakness, doubt, or distraction. The body honors the man who honors his strength. The brain releases power when the soul takes responsibility. And it all begins with permission, not from the world, but from within, to reclaim the fire, to aim it toward purpose, and to walk as one whose chemistry was not designed to cower, but to conquer. Suppressing dominance behaviors rewires the brain toward passivity, anxiety, and indecision. This is not symbolic, it is neurochemical law. The brain responds to every choice with adaptation. When you feel the surge to speak up, to act, to take the lead, and you silence it out of fear, guilt, or conditioning, you're not just avoiding a moment, you're reinforcing a pattern. Neurons that once fired in strength begin to go silent. Circuits built for power begin to decay, and what replaces them is hesitation, confusion, self-doubt. The man who habitually suppresses his drive to lead will eventually forget that he was designed to lead. Not because the capacity is lost, but because the brain has adapted to inactivity as its new identity. Every time you choose comfort over confrontation, silence over truth, distraction over mission, you're signaling to your nervous system that threat is greater than purpose. And the brain listens. The prefrontal cortex, your seat of clarity and decision-making, begins to dull. The amygdala, the fear center, begins to tighten its grip. You don't become calmer, you become more anxious. You don't become more peaceful, you become more passive. This is not humility, this is biological retreat. The very structure of your mind begins to harden around the habit of retreat, and over time, it becomes a prison. And that prison is not built by external force, it is built by your own agreement with avoidance. This is not weakness. This is misalignment. You were never designed to live from retreat. Your nervous system was wired to respond to challenge with action, not escape. But suppression teaches your body to associate strength with danger. It rewires courage into threat. It turns testosterone into tension. It convinces your biology that safety lies in silence. And once that message is repeated often enough, your brain will comply. Not because it wants to, but because it's obedient. The nervous system follows what you rehearse. This is why so many men feel restless but stuck. Loud in their minds, silent in their actions. They don't lack energy, they've just trained themselves to resist using it. Every suppressed decision stacks into a blueprint of hesitation. And that blueprint begins to shape everything: your speech, your posture, your relationships, your spiritual strength, your ability to lead. But the truth is that suppression is a choice, and what has been trained can be retrained. What has been silenced can be reawakened. Neuroplasticity does not end when passivity begins. It is waiting for a new command. The moment you act in defiance of your hesitation, when you speak the truth, when you step forward, when you accept responsibility, you ignite the dormant circuitry. You begin to reclaim what passivity tried to bury. You awaken the nervous system from slumber. And with repetition, with reverence, with structure, the brain begins to rebuild dominance not as aggression, but as aligned authority. You are not a victim of your wiring, you are the author of it, and the longer you suppress your design, the louder your soul will ache for restoration. Dopamine-driven goal pursuit is tied directly to neural pathways that reward bold, decisive action. This is not philosophical, it is molecular. Every time you take action toward a meaningful goal, your brain releases dopamine not at the finish line, but in the forward motion itself. It is the neurochemical signature of progress, and it is deeply connected to your sense of drive, momentum, and masculine energy. When a man sees a challenge, locks in on it, and moves with clarity, he activates the mesolimbic dopamine pathway, the system that was built to reward courage, not comfort. This is the fire of pursuit. It is not chaos. It is ordered aggression aimed at a target, and without it, the nervous system begins to drift, to stagnate, to fold in on itself. Dopamine is not pleasure, it is anticipation. It is the biological whisper that says, move forward, break through, stay the course. It sharpens focus, suppresses fear, and energizes the body to act with intensity and precision. When you delay action, when you avoid goals, when you live in reaction instead of direction, those circuits weaken. The brain loses clarity on what matters, the reward system stops firing, you don't just feel lazy, you feel lost. Because the map inside your mind is no longer pointing toward anything worth pursuing, and when the map disappears, so does the man. But when you act boldly, when you speak with intention, when you train with structure, when you attack your mornings instead of sleepwalking through them, dopamine flows. Not because of what you've earned, but because of how you're wired. The Creator placed within the male brain the systems to pursue. Not to wait, not to hope, but to move. And when you move, that movement becomes its own reward. This is why high performers don't need to feel motivated. They've trained their biology to crave action. They don't sit around waiting for confidence. They act, and the confidence is built through motion. Dopamine doesn't respond to wishes, it responds to obedience. This is the path of true masculine discipline. The path where effort is not punishment, it is praise. Where the body is pushed not for image but for integrity. Where the mind is focused not by force but by design. When you fix your eyes on the target and walk through resistance, the nervous system rejoices. It floods your system with clarity, hunger, fire. And it does this not once, but every time you return to the pursuit. This is how momentum is made holy, not through hype, but through structure, not through talk, but through repetition. A man who understands dopamine doesn't chase hits, he builds highways. Highways of focus, highways of action, highways of reward that feed his nervous system with the message, this is who I am, this is where I'm going, and nothing will stop me from getting there. You do not need more motivation, you need motion, you need the target, the tension, and the task, and when those align, the fire returns. Not just in the brain, but in the bones, because dopamine isn't a luxury. It is the spark of masculine pursuit, and it was placed in you to be activated, not avoided. Eye, position, posture, and breath control activate brain areas responsible for command and presence. These are not surface-level traits or performance techniques. They are direct inputs to your nervous system. The way you hold your body, the direction you aim your gaze, the rhythm of your breath, all of these shape your neurobiology in real time. When you drop your gaze, when your shoulders cave, when your breath becomes shallow and erratic, your brain interprets that posture as submission, as weakness, as danger. And it begins to shut down the very systems you need to lead. Your prefrontal cortex dims, your stress hormones rise. Your thoughts scatter, the body teaches the brain what kind of man you are becoming, and the brain listens. But when you lift your gaze, when you expand your chest, when you slow your breath with power and control, you are not just performing, you are commanding your biology. This is the physiology of presence. The eyes fixed forward activate the superior colliculus, locking your attention into a target. That activation sends signals to the prefrontal cortex, preparing you for decision, leadership, and action. At the same time, slow, deliberate breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system, anchoring your composure so that power does not become chaos. This is not trickery, this is structure. This is the body feeding the brain a message of strength, not imagined but embodied. There is a reason warriors train breath under stress. There is a reason posture matters in battle, in worship, in discipline. Because the body is not just a shell, it is a trigger, it is a transmitter, and every time you hold yourself with dignity, even when the world around you shakes, your nervous system adapts. It builds new circuitry for focus. It reinforces the pathways of calm under pressure. It tells your hormonal system, this man is in control, increased testosterone, lower cortisol, sharpened vision, focus fire. This is the biology of command, and it is not reserved for the elite. It is available to every man who will train it. Your presence begins with posture, not performance. The man who walks into a room with his breath anchored, his gaze level, and his spine straight does not need to prove anything. His nervous system does the speaking. He emits strength not by dominance but by balance, and that balance was not gifted, it was built. Posture trained, breath disciplined, gaze intentional, this is the protocol of presence. This is how you signal to your own brain and to the world around you, I am not here to react. I am here to rule myself first. There is no substitute for this work. There is no shortcut to presence. You cannot fake what your nervous system hasn't practiced, but when you do practice daily, deliberately, with reverence, you will find that the world begins to respond differently, not because it changes, but because you have. You have trained your biology to reflect the man you were designed to be. And that design begins not in words, but in posture, breath, and gaze, the language of the nervous system, the gate to dominion. Reclaiming dominance starts by reactivating your biology through challenge, structure, and controlled discomfort. Your nervous system doesn't grow stronger in safety. It grows stronger in strain. When you expose your mind and body to deliberate resistance, you don't just build muscle or discipline, you send a message to your brain that you are alive, capable, and in command. Challenge is not the enemy, it is the catalyst. Every time you place yourself in discomfort voluntarily, whether it's cold, silence, hunger, exertion, confrontation, or relentless focus, you awaken the very circuits that modern life has lulled to sleep. The circuits of drive, the architecture of will, the raw spiritual power that cannot be accessed through ease. Structure is the container that allows this discomfort to forge rather than fracture you. Without structure, challenge becomes chaos. But with structure, a schedule, a system, a rule, a vow, discomfort becomes your forge, and inside that fire, the nervous system rewires. Dopamine pathways become aligned with work instead of distraction. Stress hormones become tools instead of toxins. The amygdala shrinks, the prefrontal cortex strengthens, and the body begins to move not in fear, but in rhythm. This is not optimization, this is resurrection. This is the return to a primal order where masculinity is not abstract, but embodied through effort. Controlled discomfort is not punishment, it is alignment with nature. Everything in the created world that carries power, the sun, the wind, the ocean, the beast, endures intensity. Men who reject discomfort will always shrink spiritually, emotionally, biologically. They may appear calm, but inside their nervous system is deteriorating from lack of pressure. The warrior is forged not by rage, but by rhythm, the rhythm of entering hard spaces with clarity and returning with growth. And this rhythm is holy. This is the covenant between man and creation, that what you are willing to endure, you are worthy to lead. It starts with small commands: wake up before comfort tells you to, train before your body agrees, speak when silence is safer, fast when appetite screams, focus when your brain flinches. These small acts are not just habits, they are neural activations. They are affirmations written into your flesh. They are proof that you are willing to remember who you are. The nervous system does not need permission, it needs pattern. And every pattern of strength creates a structure of sovereignty. This is how masculinity is rebuilt in a man who has lost his way, not by thinking, but by doing. Not by waiting, but by walking. The moment you meet discomfort with open arms, with prayer in your lungs, fire in your chest, and structure in your hands, the nervous system takes note. It releases the chemicals of transformation, it opens the gates to clarity, it silences the noise of weakness. It begins to rebuild your identity not from the outside in, but from the inside out. And in that rebuilding, dominance is no longer a reaction, it is a quiet, steady reality. One that doesn't need to shout, because the biology speaks loud enough.